Have you ever wondered why the Mauser 98 action just refuses to die? I mean, think about it. Over 100 years, and it's still the gold standard for reliability. People keep asking me, what's the best control round feed rifle I can get without selling a kidney? And honestly, it's a good question because, let's face it, finding an affordable CRF rifle in today's market is like hunting for a unicorn. Lately, I've been getting a flood of messages from viewers asking about control round feed rifles. What's out there? What's still being made? And most importantly, what won't completely wreck your wallet? So I did some digging, checked out what's available, and today we're going to break it all down. We'll talk about some absolute classics, rifles that are still worth hunting for on the used market, and the few, the proud, the last affordable CRF rifles still in production. Now, I know some of you might be wondering, why does this even matter? Isn't a rifle just a rifle? Well, if you've ever had to rely on your bolt action in extreme conditions, whether that's deep in the woods or on a mountainside, you already know that a control round feed system can mean the difference between a flawless shot and a frustrating jam. So stick around, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly which CRF rifle gives you the best bang for your buck. Let's start with one of my favorites, the J.C. Higgins Model 50. Now, if you've never heard of this one, don't worry, you're not alone. It's an old-school rifle from the 1950s and 60s, built on an FN Mauser action. That's right, Belgian steel, the real deal. It's got everything you'd want in a solid bolt-action hunting rifle. Iron sights, a no-nonsense floor plate, and a stock that's simple but effective. And here's the kicker. It was never considered some high-end collector's rifle, just a reliable, well-built workhorse. Back in the day, if you wanted a Mauser-based control round feed rifle, it wasn't a big deal to find one. You had options, and good ones. But as time went on, prices went up, and now a rifle like this isn't exactly sitting on every gun store shelf. The sad truth is that well-made, affordable rifles like the J.C. Higgins have become relics of a different era. Moving on, we've got a couple of classics that are still highly sought after, the CZ601 and the Berno ZG47. The CZ601 was a real gem, and for those lucky enough to own one, you know what I'm talking about. Chambered in .308, featuring a straight-set trigger, it had that classic Mauser short-action feel, but with a few modern refinements. It's the kind of rifle that, once you get your hands on it, you don't really want to let go. But if we're talking about a true cult favorite, we have to mention the ZG47. This thing is a beast. Built in Czechoslovakia, it's got a reputation for being one of the best Mauser-based rifles ever made. The bolt shroud, the safety design, everything about it just screams quality. And yet, despite its legendary status, it's not exactly easy to come by anymore. The ones that are out there, they're either sitting in collections or priced so high that most people wouldn't even consider using them as a hunting rifle. And that brings us to the real problem, availability. You see, a lot of these rifles, while absolutely fantastic, are simply no longer in production. The days of walking into a gun store and picking up a new Mauser-based CRF rifle for a decent price are pretty much over. Manufacturers have either discontinued their classic lines or shifted focus to push-feed designs because, let's be honest, they're cheaper to make. But that doesn't mean the search is over. There are still a few affordable Mauser-based rifles out there. The question is, how long will they last? It's no secret that the rifle market has changed, and not necessarily for the better. If you've been keeping an eye on prices, you know that everything is going up, whether it's because of inflation, supply chain issues, or just the increasing cost of materials. But when it comes to Mauser-based rifles, the problem runs even deeper. The Mauser 98 action was built for war. It was designed to function no matter what, mud, dirt, blood, whatever you threw at it. And for decades, that same action was the foundation for some of the best hunting rifles in the world. But over time, manufacturers started moving away from CRF designs in favor of push-feed actions. Why? Because they're cheaper to produce, and most hunters and shooters don't actually need the extra reliability that a CRF system provides. Take CZ, for example. They used to make some of the best Mauser-style rifles on the market, but now, their standard hunting rifles have moved to push-feed designs, with only their African models retaining the classic CRF system. It's the same story with so many manufacturers. Either they've phased them out completely, or they've kept them in limited, high-end production runs that most people can't afford. And that's the real issue. The market is shifting, and the door's closing on affordable control round feed rifles. The good news: there are still a few out there, and if you know where to look, you can still get your hands on a brand new, true Mauser 98 rifle without spending thousands of dollars. But if you've been thinking about picking one up, don't wait too long, because the way things are going, they might not be around forever. So, with all these classic Mauser rifles disappearing from the shelves, where does that leave us? If you want a brand new control round feed rifle that won't cost you a small fortune, you don't have a lot of options. But there is one company still holding the line: Zastava Arms. Now, if you're not familiar with Zastava, they've been making Mauser 98 style rifles in Serbia for decades. Their LKM70 model is one of the last remaining affordable true control round feed rifles that you can buy brand new today. And when I say affordable, I mean you can find these in the $500 to $700 range, depending on availability and configuration. Compare that to the $2,000, $3,000, even $4,000 you'll pay for something like a Dakota or a custom-built CRF rifle, and the value starts to become pretty obvious. The Zastava LKM70 is a direct descendant of the Interarms Mark X, which was a staple in the rifle world for years. The action is a proper Mauser 98, with the same claw extractor, controlled feeding, and massive bolt body that makes the Mauser design so durable. It's built to take abuse, mud, dirt, rough handling. It's not going to quit on you. And yeah, I've heard people say that the finish isn't as refined as some of the older Mausers, or that they feel a little rough out of the box. But that's the thing about a true Mauser 98 action. It's designed to be broken in. The more you run it, the smoother it gets. I also like the fact that Zastava hasn't cut corners on the important stuff. You still get an all-steel floor plate and trigger guard, not some cheap polymer parts like you'll see on a lot of modern budget rifles. The floor plate release is actually an improvement over older Mauser designs. It's a side button release that's easier to use than the traditional push button and slide system. It's a little detail, but it makes a difference. Now, one thing you should know: the Zastava rifles are not as common in the US as other brands. Importing them has been inconsistent, so sometimes you'll see them everywhere, and sometimes they're almost impossible to find. But right now, they're out there. And if you want a new Mauser 98, this is pretty much your best bet. If you're willing to look on the used market, another great option is the Interarms Mark X. These were basically the Zastava rifles before Zastava started branding them under their own name. The quality is identical, and if you can find one in good condition, you're getting the same Mauser 98 reliability with maybe a bit more of that old-school craftsmanship. At the end of the day, the LKM70 and the Interarms Mark X are the last of their kind, the last affordable, mass-produced Mauser 98s. Everything else is either discontinued, a collector's item, or priced so high that it's out of reach for most hunters and shooters. If you want a new CRF rifle that won't empty your bank account, this is it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Do I really need a control round feed rifle? What's the big deal? Aren't push feed rifles just as good? It's a fair question, and honestly, for most shooters, a push feed rifle will work just fine. That's why manufacturers switched over. They're cheaper to make, and in most situations, they work almost as well as a CRF design. but there's a reason serious hunters and military snipers still swear by the Mauser-98. The biggest advantage of CRF is reliability. When you chamber a round in a Mauser-98, that claw extractor grabs onto it immediately. That means no matter what angle you're holding the rifle, even if you short-stroke the bolt, the round is fully controlled from magazine to chamber to ejection. A push-feed rifle just doesn't do that. If you get an obstruction, if dirt or debris gets in the action, if you're firing from an awkward position, a CRF rifle is far less likely to fail. The second thing is safety. If a cartridge ruptures or fails, the Mauser action is built to direct gas away from the shooter's face. That's not the case with all push-feed designs. And sure, catastrophic failures are rare, but when you're dealing with high-pressure rounds, you want every bit of safety margin you can get. Then there's the issue of extraction. Ever seen someone struggle to pull a spent casing out of a push-feed rifle? Yeah, not fun. A CRF action is built with a massive claw extractor that rips that casing out every single time. No weak ejection, no stuck brass. If you're hunting and need to reload fast, that's a huge advantage. Now, does this mean push-feed rifles are bad? No, not at all. For 90% of shooters, they'll work perfectly fine. But if you're in the field, if you're in rough conditions, if you're dealing with a rifle that absolutely has to work every single time you cycle the bolt, a CRF rifle is just built better for that job. And that's why, after more than a century, the Mauser-98 is still king. The fact that we're still talking about the Mauser-98 more than 100 years after its creation should tell you something. It's not just nostalgia. It's not just collectors clinging to the past. The Mauser-98 is still relevant today because no one has been able to build something better when it comes to sheer reliability and durability. Think about this. How many rifles from the early 1900s are still in production, virtually unchanged? The reason Mauser-98 rifles keep getting made, whether in Serbia, Germany, or by small custom shops, is because the design just works. It was built for extreme conditions, and no matter what the world has thrown at it, wars, harsh weather, rough handling, it keeps cycling, keeps feeding, and keeps firing. One of the craziest things about the Mauser-98 is how well parts from different rifles, made in different decades and even different countries, still work together. You can take a bolt from one Mauser and drop it into another, sometimes with minimal fitting. That level of interchangeability is something most modern rifle manufacturers can't even claim. A lot of shooters today gravitate toward modern push-feed designs, and for good reason. They're cheaper, they cycle smoother out of the box, and for most applications, they work fine. But once you experience a well-built CRF rifle, especially one based on the Mauser-98, it's hard to go back. That feeling of certainty when you chamber a round, the way the bolt locks up like a bank vault, the way the massive claw extractor grabs and doesn't let go, it's just on another level. That's why the Mauser-98 design isn't going anywhere. No matter how many push-feed rifles hit the market, no matter how many manufacturers try to move away from CRF, there will always be demand for rifles that are built like tanks and function under any condition. The only real question is how long affordable ones will still be available. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you own a control round feed rifle? Have you ever used one in the field? And if you could pick any Mauser-based rifle, past or present, which one would you want? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Your support means a lot, and it helps keep these kinds of videos coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.